The official position is straightforward. Older people sometimes wander off. Sometimes they are unwell. Sometimes they choose to leave. And sometimes a search simply fails. Each case, taken alone, has a quiet, ordinary explanation. That is the story on paper. Here is the detail that does not fit it. Several of these people walked out of their homes on foot, leaving their wallet, their keys, and their phone behind on the table. And in at least one case, the phones were wiped to factory settings before they left, and almost all of them held high-level security clearances. This is the kind of case I keep coming back to, because it is built entirely out of public records, missing person flyers, police statements, and obituaries, not speculation. If you would rather be walked through the actual evidence than told what to think about it, you are in the right place. So let me lay the documents out in order and let you decide where the line is between coincidence and something else. Start with the case that pulled all the others into the light. On the morning of February 27th, 2026, William McCasland left his home in Albuquerque, New Mexico, on foot. He was 68. A retired Air Force Major General, and the former commander of the Air Force Research Laboratory at Wright-Patterson. A home repairman saw him at his house that morning. An hour or two later, he was gone, and investigators found he had taken almost nothing with him. His wallet, his hiking boots, and a .38 caliber handgun. Search crews swept his favorite trails for a week. They found no sign of him, and as of this recording, they still have not. A retired general does not simply evaporate off a hiking path, and the moment that sank in, people started asking who else this had happened to. The answer is what makes this unsettling. Go back to May 5th, 2025, in Los Alamos, the small New Mexico town, built around one of the most important nuclear research sites in the country. A retired construction foreman who had worked at the Los Alamos National Laboratory for nearly 20 years walked out of his house and did not come back. And here is the part that genuinely stops me. In a town that exists to guard nuclear secrets, a town saturated with cameras, not one of them caught Anthony Chavez leaving. When a local paper asked the laboratory about it, they were redirected to the White House press office, from which no clear answer appears to have come. Then there is Melissa Cassius. She was 53, an administrative assistant at the same laboratory, and she vanished on June 26th, 2025. She was last seen on camera walking eastbound along New Mexico Highway 518, away from town. At her home, investigators found her purse, her car, her keys, her wallet, her personal phone, and her work phone. Both phones had been wiped to factory settings. She took no money. She left no note. And her family insisted this made no sense because she had plans. A lake trip with her daughter, scheduled for the very next day, and arrangements to help care for her mother through an upcoming surgery. Those are not the plans of someone preparing to disappear. I will be honest, this is the one that unsettles me most, because a wiped phone is not the act of a person having a confused moment. It is the act of someone who decided, deliberately, that something on that device could not be found. Her body was eventually discovered on May 28, 2026, nearly a year later, by a hiker in the McGaffey Ridge area of the Carson National Forest, with a handgun found nearby. The cause and manner of death have not been determined. The likely ruling, after that much time, will lean toward self-inflicted, simply because so little physical evidence survives a year in the open. But notice what that ruling rests on. Not on a note, not on a documented history, not on anything her own family recognized. It rests on context, and on the fact that a gun was found close to her remains. Before I go further, a quick word. The reason these cases never get a clean national write-up is that each one lives in scattered local reports, Facebook posts from worried friends, and police releases that quietly contradict each other. Pulling them into one place is the entire point of this channel, and if that is the kind of work you want more of, that is what subscribing keeps you connected to. Now back to the pattern, because there is at least one more name that sharpens it. On August 28, 2025, Stephen Garcia, 47, left his Albuquerque home on foot, and unlike the others, he was believed to be carrying a handgun. His job title was property custodian, which sounds like maintenance and is nothing of the kind. He worked for Kansas City National Security, and he was responsible for tracking and accounting for assets connected to the non-nuclear components of America's nuclear arsenal. A man whose work touched the most controlled materials in the country walked away from his house and was never located. His employer reportedly went through his work computers, emails, and files looking for any clue and found nothing. So lay the cases side by side and look only at what they share. Within roughly 9 months, in the same corner of New Mexico, several people connected to sensitive government work left their homes on foot. They left behind the things human beings almost never abandon: their keys, their wallets, their phones, their money. Most of them held security clearances. Some carried a firearm, and nothing else. And when you widen the lens, the connecting thread of high-level clearances ties together as many as 11 of the 14 people swept into this story. That is the anomaly, not any single disappearance, but the repetition of a very specific exit, performed by a very specific kind of person, in a very specific place. The skeptics have a name for what might be happening in our heads when we see this. They call it the brain inventing a pattern where only coincidence exists, and one prominent voice dismissed the whole thing as a statistically normal run of unrelated cases. That is a fair challenge, and it deserves to be taken seriously, because clusters do happen by chance. The question is whether this particular cluster survives a closer look or dissolves under it. Here is where it stands and where it stops. On April 20th, 2026, after the stories reached Congress, the president directed the FBI to look for any connection between the deaths or disappearances of at least 10 scientists and government workers. If the FBI has found anything in the month since, they have said nothing about it. William McCasland is still missing. Melissa Cassius's cause of death is still undetermined. Stephen Garcia has never been located. And in a town wired with cameras, built to miss nothing, there is still no footage of Anthony Chavez walking away. So I will leave you with the only honest question. Is this exactly what it looks like to a careful mind? A tragic but ordinary string of unrelated cases that our pattern-seeking brains have stitched into a story? Or is the consistency too exact, the wiped phones and the abandoned wallets, and the silence too clean to be chance? I have shown you the records. I have not told you the answer, because I do not have it, and neither does the FBI, at least not on paper. If you want to be in the room when the next document surfaces, this is the channel that will be reading it line by line. If you want to be in the room when the next document surfaces, this is the channel that will be reading it line by line.